And I love, with the sunset, we took the sunrise melody, but played it in retrograde, the opposite way. So instead of that, just for the sun setting, we now have... Yeah,
right,
yeah,
so it sounds
interesting.
So it'd be opposite of what we were playing before, right?
Which is just neat, as far as the sun coming down and setting. And of course, since we've climaxed, we need to return to that Native American flute with the pedal tone, again, in the bottom, representing the earth, and the sun is coming down. And in a sense, for the Native Americans, it's the end of their era, their time with the trail, because unfortunately, tragedy with the Spanish and other Western pioneers, their world is turned upside down.
Yeah.
And that era closes with the first one.
Yes. In fact, talking about the tragedy, the second movement called Rainstorm.
Yes.
Took me a while to totally understand. Okay. Until I learned history and visiting some professor told me the facts.
Yes.
What happened.
Okay.
So I know, what that means about the rainstorm. So
in fact, Schween, when we were first commissioned to write the piece, we were given the idea of having a Native American element, and then a Spanish element, and then a Western pioneer type of an element.
So it was originally three.
It was
movements.
originally just going to be 3 movements.
Right, each representing those 3 that Marshall just mentioned.
And as we learned more about it, we thought there's no way that we can accurately depict the Spanish trail without this element of tragedy.
yes.
Without what, because it's reality, Paiute women and children were sold as slaves on the trail.
Yes.
People died. It was not a fun experience to travel 1,100 miles from Santa Fe to Los Angeles.
Absolutely, it was a very arduous journey.
In this movement, you particularly use only string orchestra with percussion. And I'm just wondering why not use the horns, trombone.
That's a very good question, Schween.
Yeah.
Well, both of us come from a string background. Although Marshall plays the piano, he's had string experience as well. And we feel like for the kind of tugging and absolutely deepest painful emotion, the emotive nature of the strings and how they can literally just pull into sound.
Instantly, I can give an example.
Yeah.
Like
Yes,
Barbara's
exactly. And
Yeah.
that's a little bit of an influence. You may see a little bit of an influence. And we saw also Ray Vaughan Williams a lot. There's a bit of his influence in this piece. He wrote a lot of pieces that were very, 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 very emotive, and we felt like just to go down to the depth of the heartache and the emotion at the same time,
but still keep a reverent, almost a like we're paying tribute to it without the instruments of war and declaration. We wanted to save that, so there's still a reverent kind of a homage that we wanted to pay to them but still expressing just the anguish.
And there's a dichotomy here, and that's there's a bit of an element of there's a struggle here in that, okay, we're painting a picture of real struggle and real hardship, but there's also determination, and there's also the gratitude of reaching the end of the trail, and there's also the gratitude of a rainfall once in a while coming down. And that's where we grasped onto the concept of a rainstorm, is that on the trail we understood right from the very beginning water is life.
Yes.
And so water was very much a rejuvenating agent, I think, on the trail. And so we took rain as the subject matter of the second movement, rather than focusing necessarily specifically and exclusively on the hardship and the aching feet. We decided, well, what happens when it rains on the trail? We pictured what would go on. First of all, there would obviously be a buildup, and you start to hear that, and right from the very beginning, it's just this real, just dark G, and you hear these
almost the repetition of walking on the trail, footsteps one after another.
Heavy.
right, exactly, yeah, just like that. So you hear the absolute plodding along this trail, and it's still determined. However, there's a point where the agony grows to a climax, and and in the score, you know that climax is
the center. Yeah.
Right, and that reaches a climax, and then all is silent. And there's the element of the orchestra. We wanted the orchestra to be the rainstorm. We didn't want sound effects. We wanted the orchestra to create the rainstorm. Just because it humanizes it. Because rain, again, going back to the Native American understanding of the earth, rain is just as much of an element of the earth as we are. So you start to hear some sounds like this in the orchestra. These are muted pizzicatos.
Yes.
And these are little raindrops hitting into the ground. That's exactly what we picture. And those start to accelerate, indicated by the conductor. And those start turning into what is called collegno, where you'll hear this in some pieces. An example would be Mars by Holst, like this. And these are more raindrops that are hitting the earth, a little bit harder now. And then, of course, the orchestra begins to clap their hands and slap their knees and then stomp their feet, and it begins to get thunder. And then there's where our percussion joins in and helps us to have that climax of the storm and the thunder sheets and the suspended cymbals and the big bass drums. And it involves the audience. I imagine the shoulders just tensing up in the audience as this is building to a climax. And then, which is very effective.
What did you think, actually, when you saw the music?
I love this idea.
It called for slapping and plucking.
I'm interested to know that, actually. That's a good question.
In fact, I was looking, it's a little crazy. And so I started to rehearse. I love it, and my musicians love it. First of all, we're laughing actually.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Then
Yeah.
we're getting more into the related story and that related picture, and everybody absolutely just thrilled for this idea. Then we really create sounds real like the storm. Yeah.
So right as that storm is coming to a close, one of my favorite parts in the whole movement of all four movements is we bring in what's called the deliverance theme. And the deliverance theme is kind of what Steve was talking about. We've moved aside from just the anguished tone clusters that have been in that first movement, and now we've gone to just these very rich, almost Vaughan William-like chords that are layered time after time over. Where
bar 89.
Yeah,
I
right.
have to say, this deliverance theme is alluded to very
slightly
subtly.
before. Yeah.
And that is what we're picturing there. What the imagery we're seeing there is this hard journey on the trail, and all of a sudden this turn to the heavens, and almost a plea or a supplication or beg for deliverance.
Yes.
And that theme is used as a prayer first, almost, or just an ardent desire in the heart of an individual. And then that grows, and the deliverance theme, what once was a prayer, is now a prayer of gratitude and a heart-rendering just sigh of relief at this washing away of the trials.
But let's show a little bit. It's tough with just the cello and the piano, and that you've got 10 to 12, well, almost over 4 octaves,
Yes.
10 to 12 different
how many parts are going?
harmonies.
Even though there are only 5 sections in the strings, violin 1, 2, viola, cello, and bass. There probably is about 16 different parts going on. Yeah, a lot of Debussy is
almost like 50 players.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, sure.
So if you can imagine the rainstorm and the plucking and the thunder sheets and the percussion, and all of a sudden you hear this. 2, 3, and... continues on.
Right. Yeah. So that is the sigh of relief, the gratitude, and at the same time, I think there's still anguish in that because they know the journey is still not over. Even though this is one respite from this rain is offering a respite, there's still a lot more to go. But yeah.
And I'm glad that we just didn't end up fading away and just totally depressed. There is sort of a resolve to continue on the trail at the end. Sort of one last climax.
The marching comes back, the footsteps comes back, and it ends in a tone cluster at the end. And it shows. Now, when we would add now in this piece, there's one more element. And Shreen, I wanted to ask you about this too. There's an element in the middle where we picture part of the suite, Marcia, and you and I've talked about this a lot, was really a tribute to not only collective cultures involved with the trail, but also just the individual.